The topic for today's lecture is the processing and recovery of solid waste, and it is almost the second last topic of our functional elements, and the final functional element, which is the disposal of solid waste, is like left, and all other have been completed. A subsection of processing and recovery has to be covered today, and it consists of the biogas production techniques and the importance of biogas production in solid waste management systems. We already have covered composting setup in under the section of processing and recovery, as well as we have discussed different processing techniques which were physical, chemical, or biological in terms of converting the solid waste into the useful products. And there are two major processes which can be implemented on community level waste management systems. One was composting. We have studied the entire process of composting, its designing, and the process parameters as well. Now, today we will be discussing the biogas production setup along with its designing and its the parameters which are involved in terms of the biogas production and its benefits in terms of the reduction of solid waste, as well as the reduction in the emissions of the different gases being generated from the disposal sites, as well as acquiring or obtaining the energy source from the solid waste. It's very basic and very basic setup which converts the solid waste into the biogas. You must be familiar with the two processes that most of the times the composting process is aerobic process. We need to maintain the oxygen level in the composting process, while the biogas process is the anaerobic process. It is conducted in the airtight containers or reactors, which show the process is the anaerobic, and it is converting the solid waste by the use of anaerobic bacteria into the different product like compost or slurry or manure, as well as the biogas. So what's the challenge? The challenge is obviously to manage the solid waste in the communities. How can we manage our solid waste, and how can we avoid the cities from choking during the monsoon or the rainfall season or the precipitation season? And obviously there are a lot of health concerns in terms of solid waste management, as well as the aesthetics of the city, which exhibit the environment of a place. So basically, if we look at the solid waste management system, in terms of today's scenario or today's intention of the political setup, as well as the other government department setup, we just have a single problem, which is the solid waste management in this case. But it is associated with a lot of problems which are not like familiar to the authorities, or maybe they are, if they are familiar, they are not going uh, to analyze or conduct research to optimize those problems or to remove those problems. Uh, we already have discussed the iceberg phenomena in terms of environmental management systems. It is more or less similar condition that we just have to see on a single side, or we just see at a single aspect, that is the solid waste, but we do not look at the associated or allied problems which can cause a lot of issues in terms of the community development. And if we categorize those problems which are associated with single scene issue, those can be like in terms of water and wastewater issues. When the solid waste will interact with your water bodies, it would be contaminating those water bodies, and obviously that would be creating additional expense towards the treatment of your drinking water, as well as towards the treatment of the wastewater. Then comes the greenhouse gas emissions. Once you have managed the solid waste and you have dumped or disposed of it properly, even then it is emitting the greenhouse gas emissions due to the decomposition process. So that's another problem which is being added into the global warming, and it is being added into the global warming across the globe, because everybody would be dumping their waste into the landfill sites, and they would be like considering that we have done with the waste management. But the process is natural, and it starts after the disposal of solid waste, and it starts emitting the greenhouse gases into the environment, which is causing the global warming and climate change. Then poverty and slums, obviously, if you are not going to manage the solid waste in a proper way, it would be uh, targeting, and it would be hurting, or it would be disturbing the poor, and it would be like increasing their poverty level, as it would be adding the diseases as well as other health issues to those people, and they would be like adding additional cost towards their medical bills as well as their community development or aesthetic development. Then there are social unrest. Obviously, when the aesthetics of a city or of a single place are not good looking, then it causes social unrest, and the people who are living over there are continuously disturbed, or feel a mental pressure, which is in terms of the aesthetics of their area or their living area. Then there comes the air pollution in terms of the dust and other related which are which are spread across the surrounding of the dump site. Those who are living across or around the dump sites, they would be like feeling this, and they would be impacted by this air pollution system, and they would be like having more problems in terms of their health issues. So this solid waste, which is seen as a single problem, has been linked with many problems, and if it is not managed properly, it results in non-sustainable development of the society. So this is the challenge. Solid waste management is a challenge. We need to discover, or we need to adopt the already discovered processes which are like removing or reducing the solid waste in the society. Biogas production system is one of those processes, and it is the need of the hour that we should adopt the biogas production system in our communities, so that we can reduce the solid waste in the society, and ultimately we can reduce all these problems in our society. So there is a dire need of solid waste management system. There is a dire need of adopting the new techniques, or the older techniques regarding the reduction of solid waste. So if we look at the solid waste management, then there are some principles for sustainable cities in terms of the solid waste management. For example, we have uh, equity. It it says that equity for all citizens to have access to waste management systems for public health reasons. If we are establishing a solid waste management system, we must not focus on the selected areas or selected population. We must provide that facility to entire public or entire community. Then comes the effectiveness. If you have selected a solid waste management system and you have implemented that solid waste management system, then you must make sure that its effectiveness the effectiveness of the waste management system to safely remove the waste from the community. Then if you are removing the waste from community on regular basis, then comes the efficiency of your system, and the efficiency to maximize benefits, minimize cost of the operation, and optimize the use of resources. When you are efficient in having such system which are implemented and being operated on efficient basis, then comes its sustainability. If you have managed to provide services to everybody, and these services are being provided effectively to the community, and the efficiency is reasonable, then you must maintain that system, and that is called as the sustainability principle, and the final principle of the solid waste management system. Sustainability of the system from a technical, environmental, social, economic, financial, institutional, and political perspective must be ensured after the implementation of all these three principles which were discussed previously. So, sustainability principle is incorporating a lot more fields in terms of its proper sustainable development setup. For example, it is not dealing with the system only, solid waste management system only. It is dealing with its technical issues in terms of your fleet management, in terms of your infrastructure development, in terms of your uh, technical skills acquiring for the staff, as well as the environmental system, for example, in terms of the health and safety, in terms of the disposal of the solid waste, safe disposal of the solid waste, and many other systems. Then comes the social or the cultural setup, in which you have to look at the health and safety again, and as well as the aesthetics of the city, as well as the resolution of the complaints by the citizens, and making them satisfied with the operations and the effectiveness of the system. Then economic and financial setup means that you have to reduce the total cost uh, of the waste management system, and you have to look for the revenue generation opportunities in the solid waste management system, so that you can further make it sustainable setup. Then comes the institutional setup. You must be having a strong institution for the implementation and maintenance of the solid waste management system. If your system is, if your institution is not stronger enough, you won't be able to implement the solid waste management system in entire city on equal basis, and on regular basis, to make it more efficient. It would be like, if your staff, if your top management, if your middle management, and the lower management is like having different kind of personal interest and issues, then it would be very difficult to implement a sustainable solid waste management system in the cities. So everybody must be working towards the development and sustainability of the system, rather to uh, to to extract their own interest and to serve to the selected personals or selected communities, and leaving others in the ocean of solid waste. And finally, the political perspective must be focused towards the sustainability of the solid waste management system. If a government is changed, or if a political setup of the country is changed, the efficient system must not be disturbed at all, because it is for the public. It is not meant for the governments. It is not meant for the political parties. It is meant for the public, and it must remain for the public. It must not be diverted towards the uh, political personalities, or it must not be obeying the political setups. Yes, they can have a check on the yeah, on the solid waste management system or any other system which is being operated under their supervision. They can strengthen their sustainability in terms of the policy development, in terms of further collaboration with the international experts, or further improvements in the system. But they cannot uh, hinder or halt the operations in terms of just making sure that yes, we have taken over and we would be like changing, or we would be focusing towards our own directions, and we are having we are having a new system in terms of its development. So nobody is having any uh, like authentic system, carrying authentic system, and it cannot be like implemented after each and every 5 years or each election campaign. It cannot be implemented efficiently. If you have to manage the solid waste of a city, you have to be consistent with your system. You have to be very focused towards your system, so that you can manage the solid waste properly. And your top management, your middle management is ensured that there won't be any political interference in terms of their operations and in terms of their policies. So if you are like having all these points in hand, then there are a lot of chances that your system would be very sustainable, and you would be efficiently managing the solid waste of a city. If you have adopted a sustainable solid waste management system, then obviously your directions and your focus goes beyond the normal levels of the solid waste management system, and you always are enthusiastic towards the development of new models and practices which are being conducted or adopted across the globe. You make collaborations with the international community, and you adopt the relevant or concerned techniques in your system, and you want to implement all these models in your and practices in your system too. And that makes obviously your system more sustainable and more revenue is ensured or can be expected from your sustainable systems. Energy models are obviously having different perspectives in terms of the physical composition of the solid waste. There are a lot of components in setup of solid waste, and you need to select the energy extraction techniques accordingly. For example, first of all, you need to reduce your waste. This would be like saving your energy. This won't be producing energy, but saving energy in terms of its collection, transportation, and disposal. And obviously, it would be reducing the total cost of your system. Then comes the recycling and material recovery. If you have reduced your waste uh, on enough basis, for example, your city was generating almost 10,000 tons on daily basis, and your awareness campaigns and your mass communication teams or your social teams have made a lot of efforts, and they are like successful to engage public in reduction of solid waste efficiently. Then you would be dropping your total. For example, if you have dropped your total waste generation rate on daily basis from 10,000 ton to the 8,000 or whatever is the total quantity which has been reduced from the total waste, is your success. You are not going to collect that reduced waste. You are not going to uh, like ex expense are saved in terms of the collection and transportation of that waste. So now you would be collecting only 8,000 or 7,000 or 9,000 or whatever quantity is being generated after the reduction practices are in place. So once you have reduced your waste, the rest of the waste has to be collected and transported to the disposal site. But before that, if you have recovered some materials from that waste in terms of their recycling, it would also be benefiting your system, and it would be adding value towards your sustainability. Then comes the composting and biogas production, which are the biological processes, and you can convert a lot of fraction of your solid waste into these products in terms of composting of organic matter with oxygen as aerobic process, and it would be like used for agricultural fertilizers or fuel. And if you look at the anaerobic digestion, you would be producing methane, and it can be combusted for the energy uh, purposes. So all these products, or both of these products, would be like providing a lot of benefits in terms of reduction of the waste, because in developing countries like Pakistan, there is a lot of organic fraction in our solid waste. So the mainstream or the major content, or most of the quantity of the solid waste would be diverted towards the composting and biogas production processes. And obviously at the end of the day, you would be having a very minute quantity of solid waste out of that 8,000 or 7,000 tons to dispose to the landfill site. And if you sustain this process, and if you uh, uh, operate sustain in a sustainable way, obviously you would be enhancing the life of your landfill site in terms of its operations. And landfill or the methane capture technique is the most common among all countries. It must be done properly to protect the environment and public health. Similarly, if you are left with some solid waste, which is dried waste, you can send it to the gasification plant or the incineration setup, where the burning of the waste to reduce the volume of waste up to 90%, and the energy recovery models with waste streams with very high amounts of packing materials like paper, cardboard, plastics, and horticultural waste can be used in these processes. And the burning without energy recovery is not recommended, because it results in air pollution and health problems. So if you are going to incinerate your waste, or you are sending your waste to the gasification plant, you must be recovering the energy. If you are not going to recover the energy, it's not recommended, because it would be adding the air pollution. Your total quantity of the solid waste obviously would be reduced, but you are adding another problem to the environment. And if you are operating the incineration plant on regular basis, then it would be like creating a lot of health problems in the community, and it is not recommended in that regard, obviously. So this is the basic biogas cycle, and we would be discussing the biogas production processes in next slides. We can see that we generate solid waste over here, and it is being converted into the uh, biogas through the use of anaerobic digestion process, where this product can be utilized in many ways. For example, it can provide heat to the internal setup of biogas production system. It can provide heat to the household. It can be used in terms of generating electricity, as well as powering your vehicles. Biogas is a mixture of methane and carbon dioxide. The properties of biogas are similar to the ones of natural gas. Biogas is the common name of the mixture of gases which are released from the anaerobic digestion. What is anaerobic digestion would be discussed in the later slides. Typically, biogas is composed of the following constituents. For example, we have a range of different constituents, and the total sum of all these constituents must be 100. Methane is almost 50 to 75%. Carbon dioxide is 25 to 50%. So in some processes, both of these fractions are the major fractions in biogas production systems, and even hydrogen is considered in terms of the methane production, because hydrogen can be utilized over here as well. So we can add all these percentages to the methane as well, and we are left with the nitrogen and hydrogen sulfide later on. So if you are like having 50% of the total solid waste converted into the biogas, then you would be having the maximum fraction of carbon dioxide along with that, and that means that there were many categories of solid waste which were like more tending towards the production of carbon dioxide. And if you are having the components which are having much more potential of producing methane gas, for example, if you are having 70% potential or 75% potential, then the carbon dioxide production potential would be reduced accordingly. Methane is a valuable part of the biogas, and the biogas that contains about 60 to 70% of methane has a calorific value of about 6 kilowatt hour per cubic meter, what corresponds to about half a liter of diesel oil. So your 1 cubic meter of your digester would be producing 6 kilowatt hour of the calorific value, and it would be like it can be utilized to several purposes. What is biogas? So it's a mixture of the dominant species, which are methane and carbon dioxide, and the optimum values have been written as 60 to 40%, 60% and 40%. Biogas is not pure methane or natural gas. It is not biodiesel. It is not bioethanol. And if you are having the maximum content in biogas system as methane, then you must also remember that methane is very dangerous and potent greenhouse gas. It is having the global warming potential over 100 years of 23. That is, when it is averaged over 100 years, each kg of methane would be contributing to the warming of the earth 23 times as much as the same mass of carbon dioxide would be doing that. Like it is having 23 to 24 times more potential in terms of global warming. All right. Now we obtain biogas from anaerobic setup, and anaerobic setup says there is the absence of oxygen in the system when you operate for the production of biogas. There are various points which are in terms of the biogas production's background. We will be discussing those points. For example, anaerobic digestion is a natural process which occurs when organic material is kept in the absence of air. Thereby, the organic material is transformed into biogas, a renewable and green energy. In developed countries, this process has been evolved over the past 20 years, resulting in more and more complex, large-scale biogas plants, including heating and multiple-stage processes. So the developed nations have adopted it 2 to 3 decades ago, and they are now at a stage where they are dealing with the large-scale, complex biogas plants. We are not even using the simple, basic uh, digester, even at the laboratory scale. We are like having negligible or trace quantities of the uh, biogas plants. So far, several million conventional biogas plants using predominantly animal manure as feedstock have been successfully installed in rural areas of developing countries. Anaerobic digestion as a controlled and voluntary process for the reduction and reuse of green waste has a large potential to give answer to the soaring crisis of increasing municipal solid waste, for instance, in urban and peri-urban areas of the developing world, as well as the energy crisis. So, what is anaerobic digestion? In the anaerobic digestion process, microorganisms convert complex organic matter to the biogas. This was basically the background of the biogas production plants across the globe in the developed or developing nations and need of the hour. And this slide is providing a precise focus towards the anaerobic digestion process. So in the anaerobic digestion process, we know that the microorganisms which are being used to convert the complex organic matter to biogas, and this complex organic matter is your solid waste, the kitchen waste, organic waste, green waste, commercial waste, or many other categories of waste which have been discussed earlier in the initial lectures. Some organic matter remains even after the digestion step, and this is called as digestate or digested residue. It is not like you have consumed or decomposed the entire quantity of the solid waste. Most of the times, you are converting a fraction of your solid waste into the biogas, and the rest of the solid waste uh, is settled down at the bottom of your digester uh, or the reactor, and obviously it is a stabilized content of the solid waste, and it has been converted into some other product which is called as slurry, or you can also say a type of compost, anaerobic composting, and it can be applied to the to as a fertilizer to the vegetation. Anaerobic digestion is used to treat high strength wastewater. High strength wastewater are produced from, for example, your sugar mills, your dairy industry, and many other industrial setups. Organic solid waste, sewage sludge, black water, fecal sludge, agricultural waste, food industry waste, etc. For example, breweries, slaughterhouses, dairy, and manure. All these sectors can send their waste, either it is concentrated liquid waste or the solid waste, to the anaerobic digestion plants, where it can be converted into the biogas. Anaerobic digestion with biogas production also occurs in landfill, but it is obviously not controlled process. It is a totally natural process, and over there you just have to look around in terms of the biogas collection. If you are able enough to collect that biogas from the landfill site, you would need a lot of expertise in terms of establishing such systems. Similarly, septic tanks natural or constructed wetlands, dams where vegetation was flooded. All these sites produce methane gas, and this methane gas, if collected, can be used as a source of energy. This is the basic diagram which is showing the uh, five different processes. The first process is your collection or arranging the influent. This influent is like having solid waste, and this solid waste, the solid waste must be selected in terms of having maximum fraction of organic nitrogen, ammonium, phosphorus, and potassium, which would be acting as a source of nutrients in terms of the conversion of this solid waste into the new product, which is the biogas. Then you send this waste to this digester, which is airtight reactor, and it converts the all the solid waste into the two products, which is one is the biogas, which consists of the methane and carbon dioxide trace gases, and the other is slurry, which is settled down and can be collected from the bottom, and it can be utilized for the vegetation as a fertilizer. Then what comes out of the system is the ammonium, nitrogen, organic nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium as a nutrient. So here it was not in the form of suitable fraction in terms of using this solid waste as a direct fertilizer, but after passing through this reactor, you have converted it into the biogas as well as slurry, and this slurry can be utilized as the fertilizer with the same content or the same characteristics which were added at initial level as influent. This is another diagram of the same anaerobic reactor, and it says that anaerobic digestion uses microbes or the microorganisms or the anaerobic bacteria in an oxygen-free tank to break down the manure into biogas and nutrient-rich liquid. And how it works is the addition of complex organic material into the reactor. There are different phases. The first phase is a liquidification phase, in which the acid is formed by the bacteria. The second stage is the gasification phase, and here the methane forming bacteria come across and they take over from the acid forming bacteria, and they convert these acids to the methane and the biogas, and later on you can collect the methane as and carbon dioxide as biogas, and the other slurry as the fertilizer, so natural soil conditioner. Heat needs to be added to the anaerobic digestion to maintain temperature ranges, and this is the timeline which is required for the completion of this process. It can be controlled by the changing in the controlling factors. If we are talking about this figure and the processes and the stages or the phases of different processes which are being conducted in this airtight digester vessel, then we must know what kind of complex organic material can be added into this reactor for optimizing this time period and the temperature and the other factors. So the selection of the complex organic material of or the feedstock or the raw material or the solid waste or the organic waste or whatever name can be given to that waste is very important. The selection of this material is very important, and we must know the characteristics of or the properties of the complex organic material in terms of its biodegradation, and that at what time period it is biodegraded efficiently, and it like it would be it would be like enhancing the efficiency of our biogas production system. Because you know that if you are like if you are having some type of waste which are like hard to degrade in a given time frame, for example wood chips or grass leaves, etc., then you can add that waste into the composting pad, because in composting we have almost double time period as compared to the biogas system. So it's not like that you have to add the each and every organic fraction into the biogas plant. You look at the look at the biodegradation factor of the relevant or concerned waste setups, and then you add those things into the related process accordingly. So these are the types of waste which are degraded on very faster pace as compared to these products or the raw materials which are very hard to degrade in a given time frame. So for with short residence time, we can add to the biogas plant, and with longer residence time, we can add those organic fraction to the composting plants. This table is showing the yield of biogas from different sources. There are a lot of types of solid waste sources, organic solid waste. It is a mixture of industrial as well as the community waste, and it is showing the second column or the central column is showing the yield of biogas, uh, kg of biogas from a single cubic meter. Similarly, methane content in terms of the percentages have also been shown over here. So up till now we have discussed a lot of things which are like concluding things towards a very like final stage. We know that anaerobic is a process which are being conducted without the presence of oxygen. Aerobic processes are those which are conducted with the presence of oxygen. Anaerobic digestion, degradation, or the treatment is used interchangeably and mean breaking down of the organic matter. While after the breaking down of organic matter, we find two things. One is biogas and the other is digestate. And the digestate is the effluent from the digester, the liquid product of the anaerobic digestion process, and can be utilized as fertilizer. While the biogas is the gas product, and it is produced by microorganisms in anaerobic process, typically 66% of methane content. Biogas digester or the anaerobic digester is a covered vessel which in which anaerobic digestion occurs. So all these are the terminologies which are like we must be familiar after reading or after consulting with this lecture, and we must know that what type of terminologies can be utilized or can be asked in terms of the biogas systems, along with many other terminologies. So we use green waste for the production of biogas. What is green waste then? We already have covered it in a very detailed way, but we just need to recall the green waste types. For example, organic fraction of municipal solid waste, waste from the agriculture, garden refuses, refuses from the food industry, some industrial waste, kitchen refuses, or market waste. All these categories have already been discussed in detail while we were discussing the sources of solid waste. Anaerobic digestion of green waste is a multi-stage process. We already have discussed this in various figures. We would be briefly discussing those processes once again. This is the raw material which is being added to this airtight vessel or the reactor. Here we are having biogas which can be utilized as cooking, lighting, heating, electricity and fuel. All these are the uses of the biogas. And the other product is the fertilizer, which is the slurry, and it can be utilized to produce the food for the human beings, and this food when wasted can obviously be added into the same reactor once again. So it's a cyclic process basically. Similarly, this cyclic process can be exhibited in this way as well. The food is being utilized at the household level, and from there it is wasted, and then it is coming into the anaerobic reactor, from where we are having two products. One is enlightening our houses and industries, and the other is like adding the soil amendments to the natural system or vegetations. So it's a cyclic activity, and it would be sustainable system on smaller scales as well as the larger scales. On smaller scale, you would be having the energy content for the utilization at household level, while at the large scale you can utilize all those energy sources towards the major sources of as a major source of electricity or heat. And you can see that all these processes are involving many stages. Here we were having the solid waste which was being generated from the household, and uh, at at the larger scale we are having these organic waste from the community waste management systems. It is being grinded, then it is sent to the digester where it is being digested, and after digestion it is producing biogas and the slurry. This slurry can be treated or can be utilized as the maturation fertilizer and compost, and can be enhancing the yield of our soil and crops, while the biogas can be burnt or converted into the electricity and heat. So these are the two products which are being produced, and these can be used for many benefits. This is another example of uh, uh, involving the farmhouses and the livestock in the biogas production system. So biogas production system is dependent on the anaerobic digestion process, and this process is having 4 stages. And those stages are discussed over here. First one is the hydrolysis, the second one is fermentation, the third one is acetogenesis, and the final stage is methanogenesis. As their title are depicting their properties or the processes which can be occurred in the relevant stages or like phase, it can easily be determined. For example, cleavage of chemical compound through the reaction with water is called as hydrolysis, and insoluble complex molecules are broken down to short sugars, fatty acids, and amino acids. So the complex sugar or complex molecules can be broken down into the small or the simple sugar molecules, as well as fatty acids and amino acids. These these molecules in later stages, for example in fermentation, Products from hydrolysis are transformed into further simpler molecules, that is the organic acids, alcohol, carbon dioxide, and ammonia. In acetogenesis, these are further converted into the acids as well as the other simpler products, and these simpler products are later on converted into the methane by the methanogenic bacteria at the methanogenesis stage, and these transform the acetic acid, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen into the biogas. This is another type of elaboration of your same setup. So if somebody is not familiar or not good at understanding these kind of elaborations, he can be very good at understanding this kind of elaboration. These are the 4 stages which have been mentioned over here there along with the respective bacteria. Fermentation bacteria are being utilized in hydrolysis and fermentation. Acetogenic bacteria are being utilized in acetogenesis, and the methanogenic bacteria are being used for the methanogenesis stage. The first stage is having the complex organic materials, and the other stages are having simpler and easier to degrade constituents, which are finally converted into the biogas. When we are talking about the anaerobic digestion, and this anaerobic digestion, all these processes are taking place in some container or reactor or digester, then we must know about the geometry or the process or the characteristics of the anaerobic digester as well. So the anaerobic digester is an airtight chamber filled with green waste. Anaerobic digestion takes place, sludge settles bottom, gas bubbles to the top where it is collected for further utilization. Reaction temperature is mesophilic or thermophilic, 35 to 55 Celsius. It can be continuous system or the batch mode system. If the batch mode system is being utilized, it will be filled and left for digestion. After the hydraulic retention time, emptied and filled again for a new cycle. Continuously stirred tank reactor CSTR are those which continuously make sure that the raw material is coming in and going out and mixing the waste on proper basis and converting the solid waste into the biogas. Plug flow reactor, the sludge moves through the reactor much like a train to a tunnel with a velocity corresponding to the minimal HRT. So this is, there are 3 systems which have been discussed over here. The first one was the batch system. The second one was the continuous system. The third one is the plug flow reactor. The batch system is operated on intermittent basis. The CSTR system is being operated on continuous basis, while the plug flow system is the combination of both these processes. Like a batch is being processed at a very slow speed, which is being replaced by a new batch on continuous basis. So it's a mixture of batch and continuous system. And finally, the liquid phase can be recirculated to maintain the optimal moisture conditions. If you need to add the moisture content, you can add that slurry back to the system for the efficiency, for increasing the efficiency of your system. This figure is also showing the closed vessel as anaerobic digester and showing its different properties. For example, residence time of 3 weeks, temperature of mesophilic to thermophilic ranges, mixing pumps, recirculation system. If you are collecting these slurry at the bottom, you can use as digested waste, or you can recirculate it into the system once again. These are small scale digesters. These can be like mobile digesters. These can be installed at the household level digestion system. These are the large scale digesters which I mentioned earlier in terms of the developed nations which are incorporating with the complex large scale biogas plants. Once you have generated or produced the biogas, where it can be utilized, biogas can be utilized to cook your food, to provide light, to boil your water, to generate electricity at household level or at the smaller level, and then obviously uh, combined heat and power plant as a complex plant system. We are not even standing at the first stage. Then how the digestion of green waste optimizes the solid waste management system, sustainable solid waste management system. It has already been discussed. This figure has been discussed, and you can always go through these elaborations at later stages, as the lecture is being recorded, and you would be having access to that recording as well. Here we have the basic process parameters in terms of the design principles for the operation of the biogas plant. The biogas yield depends upon the process and the substrate. It depends upon obviously the category or type of the waste, as well as the process, which type of process is being adopted, and what kind of parameters are being optimized or are being dealt accordingly. Substrate must be having high COD or high organic content, as we have discussed the types of the waste which can be added into the biogas plant were having high content of the organic fraction from the sugar mills or brewery industry, or the solid waste with the high biodegradability factor. Anaerobic digestion is the biological system of bacteria. Optimal conditions required that bacteria feel wealthy, and temperature can enhance the performance, and retention time can be reduced due to the maintenance of the temperature. And similarly, we can look at the pH levels as well. It would be having lesser pH levels at different stages, as the acid production is a part of this process. Wide range, but methanogenesis requires neutrality. If you are moving from the acetogenesis to the methanogenesis process, you would be raising the pH from acidic level to the neutral level, and multi-stage process for better pH and temperature control can be utilized. Total solids and moisture which is being utilized in the system must be in wet digestion, total solid should be less than 20%. In dry digestion, it must be greater than 20%. Some examples of the applications of the biogas plant can also be discussed on later stages. You can always go through the specifications of these plants. These are shared for your information only. that you must know that these can be installed at the household levels, and these can be very effective in terms of the biogas production. This process is like very simple process in which you are having two different uh, type of tanks. These are the water tanks, which are very common in our local region as well. You are having two different tanks with different dia. The one is having more dia as compared to the other one, which is kept at the top of this system, and it is like to produce the anaerobic conditions. This is a much larger as compared to the previous setup. It can also be installed at the household level where you are having the livestock, and it can obviously be used for different purposes. Then we have the major plant, which can be helpful in providing the energy source of energy to the grid station or some industry. Conventional floating drum reactor liquids are mixed with incoming feedstock and recirculated. A baffle in the middle increases the solid retention. This is the baffle, which is like retaining these solids for a very longer time period, and the efficient uh, biodegradation of the solid waste. Its applicability can also be like considered in terms of anaerobic digestion can transform almost any biodegradable waste into biogas. The anaerobic treatment of organic solid waste is applicable everywhere where there is a need for biogas, and the waste treatment and the technical conditions allow the installation of a plant. Small scale biogas plants, biogas generation for cooking and lighting, low cost and relatively low technical aspects are involved at household level, community level, and institutional level, while large scale or high tech require expert design, and industrial plant can be connected to the public power and heat grid. Low tech or unheated plants, however, are only adapted to the areas where temperature does not fall short of for any substantial length of time. तो जो आपके नॉर्मली जो गर्म इलाके हैं, गर्म मरतूब इलाके हैं, उनमें आप इसको इफेक्टिवली यूटिलाइज कर सकते हैं. This is an example of showing the opportunity and potential of rural India, which generates enormous quantities of bio waste, including animal waste and crop residue, which is the industrial waste. According to the 20th Livestock Census of India 2019, India has this much category of the solid waste in terms of the organic waste, which is equivalent to the 1700 million metric tons total dung production in 1 year. All these are contributing towards the generation of 1700 million metric tons of the total dung, which can be converted to the biogas and bioslurry. These two products are the resultant of the biogas product or anaerobic digestion, and in with this type of potential, they are like biogas 50% of the India's present LPG consumption per year, and its value can be 4400 crore. While the bioslurry which is the 44% of the India's NPK requirement, and it can be like adding 4,250 crore, almost same amount of the rupees can be saved if all this waste is converted to the biogas effectively. So you can see the impact of your different types of waste on your revenues. The weaknesses include the quality parameters and quality measurement. We are lacking in these areas, and we are like working on these areas. Value of the certificates and injection into the national grid. This is the table which is showing the potential of uh, like potential of natural gas value, total natural gas value in terms of the existing setup of potential of the production of the biogas. This is the product for which we are discussing all these things, and this can be used for many purposes. For example, we will be discussing the benefits or the uses of this biogas in upcoming slides, and then we would be concluding today's lecture. For example, biogas can be burned and used as a heat source. Biogas can be used to operate an engine generator set that produces electricity. You can store the gas but cannot store the electricity. So it's another technical point that if you are producing biogas, you can store that biogas somewhere, but you cannot store the electricity for a long time period if you have generated the electricity. There are a lot of benefits in terms of local, regional, and global level. If you look at the local benefits, it reduces the odor, fly eggs, weed seeds in digested manure, and it can also be a source of revenues, on-farm power production sales, tipping fees from other feedstocks. If you start charging the other people for bringing their waste towards your biogas plant, you can also add this thing towards your revenue generation setup. Regional level benefits include pathogen reduction of the land applied nutrients and the subsequent benefit to the food chain, rural electric grid voltage support. Global level includes the reduced methane emissions and reduction in the dependency on foreign fossil fuels and reduction in the global warming. Anaerobic digestion does not reduce nutrients in manure. If considering to build an anaerobic digester, select an experienced farm digester consultant. These benefits, which were earlier shown as local, regional, and global, can also be considered as social, economical, and environmental at any level. For example, social benefits, economic benefits, environmental benefits. Social benefits include the job creation for local people, health improvement of the local people in terms of disease reduction due to the utilization of clean energy and end products used as land fertilizer, avoiding the waste to the environment, lifestyle improvements. Economic benefit includes the energy saving, farm development, various use of the end products. Pros and cons of the biogas production involve the advantages of the biogas production involve generation of biogas and fertilizer, which are the main products of this process, and these ensure that almost complete retention of the fertilizer nutrients is ensured. Reduction of greenhouse gas emission through methane recovery. The biogas is collected and the greenhouse gas is reduced. Combined treatment of different organic waste and wastewaters. Reduction of solids to be handled. Good pathogen removal depending on the temperature. Process stability in terms of high loads can be treated, but anaerobic sludge can also be preserved for prolonged periods without any feeding. Then we have the disadvantages of the process. For example, small and middle scale anaerobic technology for the treatment of solid waste in middle and low income countries is still relatively new. As we discussed earlier, that we are not like using the small scale or the middle scale anaerobic technology, and we are lacking behind in terms of the biogas production systems. Experts are required for the design and construction depending on the scale, may also for operation and maintenance. So at each and every stage you need expert people who would be monitoring all the activities regarding the biogas production. Reuse of produce energy, that is transformation into fire or light, heat and power, needs to be established. Similarly, high sensitivity of methanogenic bacteria to a large number of chemical compounds. So we must be avoiding the chemical compounds to be added into the biogas production plant, because the bacteria which are involved in the methane process completion would be disturbed by various chemical compounds presence, and sulfur compounds can lead to odor problems in the biogas system. So all these benefits are once again discussed over here in terms of the happening of the process takes place in the airtight reactor. The organic fraction of the waste is converted into the biogas, which can be utilized as source of energy, and it can also be used as cooking, heating, and lighting. It can also be used to produce the heat and power. It can also be utilized as fuel, and the digestate, which is the second product, can be utilized as the natural product for the well balanced fertilizer setup. This is the basic setup in which you can easily make yourself understand that the waste has been shredded, the organic waste has been shredded to a uniform size for the effective biodegradation. If you are receiving a lot of waste on community level on daily basis, uh, uh, you must have the shredding process in place so that all the waste is shredded, and this would be reducing the total time period of the biodegradation, because you already have degraded the waste as a uniform size. You can also add moisture content to enhance the biodegradation process. This is the construction phases. This is showing the construction phases of the biogas dome construction in India at local village level. You can see the completion of this process. This is another mechanized anaerobic reactor for the production of the biogas. This is another anaerobic reactor for the biogas production. This is the conversion of the biogas to the energy or electricity. You can see the biogas anaerobic digestion reactor over here as well. This is the generator of electricity from the biogas. This figure is showing the simplest biogas process setup. I have included this system as to operate with very uh, optimum in a very optimum way to conduct your FYP. You can be having you can have such systems in terms of evaluating the different biogas production potential of different feedstocks with multiple such setups. With this, we conclude our session. It is the biogas production system has been completed. I am looking for a video for the proper understanding of this system. This is the shortest video which can be utilized or which can be I'm sharing this video with you. If it is visible to you guys, you can confirm. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. Can always see the benefits of the organic waste to the biogas as well as to the fertilizer or the natural soil conditioner. This was the shortest elaboration in terms of the biogas production, and obviously we can have a lot more elaboration in terms of the biogas setup. Maybe this is also helpful for you guys to understand the biogas production system at a large scale in terms of biogas production. The basic process of making the slurry or real production with waste is being the and reactor mechanical process are further homogenizing the waste, and then the biogas is produced. It rises to the top of the anaerobic reactor, from where it can be collected from the top of the reactor, and the slurry or the liquid type waste can be collected from the bottom of this reactor. So all these processes are very helpful in terms of the biogas production and the natural soil conditioner production. This is the usage of biogas of the generator operation. Then this generator can convert the biogas to the electricity, which can obviously be sent to the industry, institutions, and households for utilization. While the slurry or the natural soil conditioner can be utilized as vegetation setups. So this was all about the biogas production. If anybody is not having the clear concept of this biogas production system, you can ask questions, and we obviously would be winding up after the question answer session. Is there any problem?
No, sir.